The grand hall of the Vare Dominion was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Its ceiling arched higher than the towers of Earth's oldest cathedrals, covered in glowing stones that shimmered like distant stars. The floor was made of black crystal, polished so perfectly that the human delegation could see their own reflections as they walked. Every step echoed through the chamber, watched by thousands of alien eyes. At the center of the hall sat the throne of Queen Zirathis, ruler of the Vare. She was tall, her form both elegant and terrifying, with eyes that glowed faintly like embers hidden under ash. Around her, the noble houses of her empire stood in curved ranks, their faces unreadable, their pride heavy in the air. The Vare Dominion was old, far older than humanity's place in the stars. To them, humans were newcomers, fragile creatures, who had only recently begun to explore beyond their small blue world. Yet today, for the first time, the Vare were forced to acknowledge humanity's growing presence in the galaxy. And so Commander Elias Ward, a representative of Earth, had been summoned to speak before the Queen herself. Elias was calm as he stepped forward, though his heart beat quickly in his chest. He wore the simple formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps without the gold or jewels the Vare nobles wrapped themselves in. To the aliens he looked plain, even unimpressive, but his eyes held focus, the kind that saw more than most people realized. The Queen leaned back on her throne, studying him like one might study a curious insect. Her voice, when it came, filled the vast chamber, smooth but edged with steel. "So, this is the human envoy," she said, her tone both amused and dismissive. "You stand here representing your kind, who still crawl among the stars like children. Tell me, Elias Ward, do humans believe they can stand equal to the Vare Dominion?" Murmurs rippled through the hall, sharp and mocking. The nobles expected the human to tremble, to stutter, to bow in weakness, but Elias only met her gaze and answered, his words steady. "Humans don't seek to rule over others," he said. "We seek to learn, to trade, to build. Equality comes not from fear, but from respect." The hall fell quiet for a moment, as if surprised by his boldness. Then laughter erupted from the nobles. Their voices echoed like thunder, filling the chamber with scorn. To them, this was comedy, an insect daring to speak of respect before a queen who commanded worlds. Queen Zirathis raised her hand, silencing the hall. Her lips curved into a smile, sharp and dangerous. "You speak bravely for a creature so young," she said. "Perhaps you are different from the others I have met. Tell me, human, do you know what it means to speak my true name?" The question startled even her court. Whispers spread quickly, nobles leaning to one another in surprise. For, among the Vare, a ruler's birth name was sacred. It was never spoken after ascension to the throne, never written in record, never shared with anyone. To know it was to hold a piece of their soul. Elias tilted his head slightly, curious. "Your true name?" The Queen's smile deepened. She knew he could not possibly understand. It was impossible. And yet, something in his calm eyes made her want to test him. With a voice both playful and mocking, she said, "Yes, my true name, the one I was born with. No alien, no rival, no servant has ever spoken it aloud. If anyone were to guess it, they would bind me by oath. If a human could guess it." She let the words hang in the air, her voice dripping with amusement. Then she laughed softly. "Then I would marry him." The court exploded in laughter, louder than before. The sound was deafening, waves of mockery filling the chamber. The nobles clutched their robes, their jeweled ornaments shaking as they bent forward with glee. The thought was absurd to them. A human, guessing the sacred name of their queen. Impossible. Ridiculous. Elias, however, did not laugh. He stood still, his expression unreadable. His eyes stayed on the Queen, watching her carefully. Zirathis noticed this. For a moment she faltered in her laughter, curiosity flickering in her mind. Why did he not laugh? Why did he not lower his eyes like the others? "You do not find my joke amusing?" she asked, her tone sharper now. Elias shook his head slightly. Jokes can reveal more than truth, he replied. What you said may have been meant for laughter, but I hear something more. You spoke as though it matters, perhaps more than your court realizes. The hall went silent again. The queen narrowed her eyes, intrigued and irritated at the same time. Most who spoke so boldly before her ended their lives in chains. Yet this human was different. He looked at her not as a god, not as a conqueror, but as someone to be understood. For reasons she could not name, she allowed him to continue. Then you will try to guess? She asked, her voice low, testing. Perhaps not today, Elias said calmly. But one day, yes. If you have a name, then it can be found. No secret is eternal. Gasps echoed through the hall. To speak so boldly was madness, yet he had said it without arrogance, without mockery, only with a certainty that unsettled even the most hardened nobles. Queen Zarathis leaned forward, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Then I welcome you to try, human. Fail, and your people will remain as insects beneath our boots. Succeed. She paused, a strange smile crossing her lips. And you will discover what it means to hold the fate of an empire in your hands. The chamber trembled with whispers. The challenge had been set, though most saw it as a cruel joke, a game meant to remind humans of their weakness. Only Elias understood what had truly happened. A door had opened, a path no one else dared to walk, and he intended to see where it led. The days after the challenge spread through the palace like wildfire. Everywhere Elias walked, alien eyes followed him. Some stared with open mockery, others with thinly veiled suspicion. The nobles whispered behind jeweled fans, their laughter sharp like blades. To them, the human envoy had become a living joke, the insect who dared to dream of grasping the queen's sacred name. But Elias did not let their scorn shake him. He moved with calm steps through the grand halls, studying everything he saw. Where others saw only alien splendor, Elias looked for patterns. He studied the carvings on the crystal walls, the arrangement of symbols across the ceilings, the rhythm of songs sung by alien choirs in the mornings. To him, these were not decorations but fragments of history. Every symbol, every sound, every forgotten verse carried meaning. Queen Zarathis had not expected this. She had thought the human would be embarrassed, that he would retreat into silence, or hide behind formality. Instead, she found him observing, listening, asking questions where others would bow. He was polite, never crossing the line into disrespect, but there was always a sharpness in his eyes, a hunger to learn. One evening, as the queen walked through her garden of glass bloom flowers, she noticed Elias standing quietly near the edge of the courtyard. The guards had allowed him to pass because she herself had not forbidden it. He was watching the strange flowers shift colors under the alien sun, his hands behind his back. You walk boldly through my home, human, Zarathis said, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. Most would fear stepping into the queen's private garden without summons. Elias turned slightly, meeting her gaze. I walk where I am allowed, he said. And I observe what others ignore. The queen tilted her head, intrigued. And what do you see in these blooms that my own nobles fail to notice? They change color, Elias replied simply, not because of the light, but because of sound. The vibration of footsteps, the breath of wind. Each flower responds differently. It is almost like language. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Few outsiders ever realized this truth. To most, the flowers were nothing but ornaments. Yet the human had seen deeper. You are observant, she admitted, but observation alone will not grant you my true name. Elias nodded. No, but observation is where truth begins. The queen said nothing, but a faint smile touched her lips before she walked away. For the first time, she felt a sliver of curiosity toward the human who refused to be ordinary. In the grand libraries of the Ver, Elias spent long hours among towering shelves of glowing data crystals. The nobles mocked him for wasting his time, but he ignored them. He studied the old texts, songs, and legends of the Ver. He paid attention to stories that most nobles dismissed as childish myths. He discovered that every queen of the Vare was given a throne name at the time of ascension, but each had also been born with a personal name, a name erased from history as if burned away by ritual fire. The throne name became eternal, the birth name forbidden. But why forbid it? Elias wondered. What power did those names hold that they must be hidden forever? One day, while reading an ancient scroll, Elias overheard two alien scholars whispering nearby. They spoke of an old poem said to describe the first queen of the Vare, a figure of myth who had carried the bloodline that still ruled today. The scholars dismissed it as meaningless, yet Elias caught fragments that stirred his thoughts. The child of the dawn, called by the mother's song. The words echoed in his mind. A mother's song. A child's name. Forgotten by all, except perhaps whispered once in love, Elias began to form an idea. Back in the throne hall, the nobles grew restless. "Why do you allow this insect to wander freely?" one noble demanded. "He mocks our traditions with his questions." Another added, "He will fail as all others have. No one can guess the true name of the queen." Queen Zirathis listened in silence. Her court was angry, but she herself was not. Instead, the palace of the Vare Dominion was vast, and yet Elias felt that its true secrets were hidden in corners no noble dared enter. He moved quietly through narrow hallways lined with glowing panels and ancient inscriptions. Every step he took felt like walking through layers of history. The Vare were proud of their records, yet even they had overlooked small details, things that might reveal truths hidden beneath centuries of tradition. Elias returned again to the archives, where data crystals, stacked like towers, glimmered under soft lights. Some held the records of conquered worlds. Others preserved the history of the Vare people itself. He did not search for strategy or politics. He searched for patterns, fragments of stories, whispers of forgotten songs. He believed that somewhere within these ancient records lay a clue to the queen's true name. For days he read, took notes, and pieced together the fragments of history. One story caught his attention, a tale of the first queen of the Vare Dominion, a figure long thought myth. The story described her as a child of dawn, given a secret name by her mother, a name that carried a bond of trust and love, never to be spoken aloud. The legend was vague, leaving gaps the human mind could explore. Elias understood that the Vare did not hide this legend because it was powerful. They hid it because it was personal. No one wanted their true name to be known. And yet, to guess it, he realized, one must see the queen not as a ruler, but as a person, a child who had grown up, a being with fears, memories, and secrets. Meanwhile, the court was growing restless. Noble advisors whispered in fear and anger. "This human is dangerous," one said. "He listens, he observes, he does not flinch. He may discover more than we intended." "Even if he fails," another added, "he changes the queen's mood. She is distracted. She laughs more, yet she is wary. That is not wise for one who controls thousands of worlds." The queen herself noticed Elias's persistence. At first, she had thought him amusing. Now she found it unsettling. His presence reminded her of a time when life had been simpler, when she was not surrounded by endless expectation and duty. Zirathis began testing him indirectly. She allowed him access to restricted areas, watched how he handled delicate situations, and even spoke in riddles during their sessions. The court was horrified. No outsider, and certainly no human, had ever been allowed such freedom. Yet Elias handled each challenge calmly. He listened, noted the smallest detail, and moved without fear. To the queen it became a strange game, one where the insect dared to explore without shrinking under the shadow of the crown. One night, while reviewing ancient songs and nursery rhymes, Elias noticed a pattern in certain lines. The words were repeated, always in connection with a memory of the first queen's childhood. A small phrase kept returning, "Little star of the dawn, hidden within my mother's song." The phrase was not recorded in official history. Only scattered footnotes overlooked by scholars mentioned it. Elias studied the rhythm, the structure, and even the sounds embedded in the alien language. He began to see how the words could form a name, how a child's soft song might translate into a secret identifier, a name never written in the annals of power. He realized something important. The Queen's true name was not just a word of authority, it was a word of memory, of connection, of love. To guess it, he had to understand her humanity. Back in the throne hall, Zarathus grew increasingly aware of his progress. During their daily audiences, she watched him more closely. He asked questions that seemed simple, yet revealed a depth of understanding. He observed the manner in which she addressed her council, how she walked among her guards, even the subtle changes in her expression when she spoke of her childhood. The Queen felt an unfamiliar stir within her, an awareness that someone might see beyond the crown, beyond the titles, beyond the image of perfection she had built. Elias did not seek to dominate, did not seek to impress, but only to understand. And that made her uneasy. The nobles around her whispered anxiously. "Do you see what he is doing?" one said. "He studies her as though she is nothing but a puzzle. If he succeeds, it will humiliate the entire court." "Yes," another replied, "but he will fail. No human can guess the sacred name of the Queen." Zarathus did not answer. She remained silent, but her mind raced. A name was a fragile thing, easily destroyed by carelessness, and yet it could be guessed by the observant, the patient, the curious. Elias worked tirelessly. Each night, he compared the fragments of old songs, the nursery rhymes whispered to children, and the patterns in court behavior. He mapped the historical lineage of Vere queens and noticed that the first letters of certain ceremonial chants, when arranged in order, spelled out sounds that resembled the nursery phrases. His pulse quickened with every small discovery. He knew he was close, though the name remained just out of reach. The Queen's name was a puzzle not of force nor of cunning, but of observation, empathy, and persistence. And as he studied, he realized something else. He did not merely wish to guess her name as a game or a challenge. He wanted to understand the person behind the throne. That was the key, the human ability to see others as more than their titles, to care about what lies beneath. Late that evening, Elias looked out at the city beyond the palace walls. Towers of alien crystal glimmered under the twin moons. Yet, his mind was focused on the Queen. She was more than a ruler, more than a challenge. She was a story waiting to be understood. And he was determined to see it through, not with force, but with patience, insight, and respect. In that moment, he felt a quiet certainty. Others might mock, others might fail, but humans had a way of finding answers where no one else would think to look. And if the Queen's true name could be discovered, he would be the one to do it. Somewhere in the halls of the palace, Zarathus felt a disturbance she could not name. A small chill of awareness passed through her, a sense that the human, the insect she had once joked about, was closer to something unimaginable. She could not yet understand what made him different, but deep inside, a thought whispered, "This human is not like the others. He sees me," and for the first time the game was no longer one-sided. The Vere Palace was quieter than usual that morning, the great hall almost empty except for Elias and a few servants who moved with quiet efficiency. Sunlight streamed through the crystalline windows, scattering patterns of colored light across the black floors. Elias moved among the shadows, his eyes scanning every carving, every symbol, every line of alien script. He had spent weeks studying the Queen's history, the language of her people, and the old legends that few had thought worth preserving. Each discovery was a small piece of the puzzle, but he felt he was beginning to see the larger picture. The Queen's true name was hidden not only in words but in patterns, in traditions, and in gestures, an intricate code left for those who cared to look. Zarathus watched him silently from her throne room balcony. At first she had expected him to fail, to falter, to retreat in embarrassment like so many before him. But he had not. Instead, he moved with steady confidence, careful observation, and a strange patience that unsettled her. He was not like other humans she had met. No, he was more. She had allowed him access to restricted areas, only to see what he might uncover. Now, watching him in the quiet morning, she realized something she had never considered. He might actually succeed. Elias paused near a set of ancient ceremonial scripts. His finger traced the raised lines, feeling the patterns as if they were more than ink or light. They were stories. Symbols that seemed random now revealed subtle repetitions. The syllables matched fragments of nursery rhymes whispered long. Go songs meant for children. A mother's voice carried a secret through generations, and these scripts were echoes of that song. He smiled faintly. A name, simple in sound but rich in history, was beginning to form in his mind. The Queen had hidden it not with locks or spells but in memory itself. That afternoon the Queen summoned him. She walked down the great hall, her steps echoing, and stopped before him. Her glowing eyes seemed almost softer, curious instead of commanding. You persist, she said. Few humans have the patience to endure my court. Most retreat after a week of whispers and laughter. Elias inclined his head respectfully. Observation requires time. Understanding requires patience. Her lips curved into a small smile, more thoughtful than amused. Do you believe you understand me? I believe I can see you as you are, not only as the Queen others fear, Elias replied. And in seeing you, I may understand what your people have hidden for centuries. Zirathis blinked. No human had ever spoken to her this way. Others had approached with fear, with arrogance, or with flattery. Elias had approached with neither. He looked at her not as a ruler to be conquered or a prize to be won, but as a person with history, memory, and secrets. For the first time, the Queen felt something she had not felt in many years: vulnerability. The crown she had worn so long felt heavier, and the throne, once a place of untouchable power, seemed more fragile. Over the next several days, Elias continued his work, quietly gathering clues. He noticed patterns in how the Queen's advisors addressed her, subtle gestures that hinted at old traditions, and even small quirks in the ceremonial songs. Nothing was wasted. Every movement, every sound, every overlooked detail was a thread that could lead to the hidden name. One evening, the grand hall was filled with tension, unlike anything it had seen in centuries. The air shimmered with the combined energy of curiosity, fear, and anticipation. Nobles of the Vare Dominion lined the polished black floors, their jeweled robes glinting in the light. Servants and attendants hovered silently, eyes wide, unsure whether to step forward or flee. At the center, Commander Elias Ward stood with calm resolve, his gaze fixed on the throne where Queen Zirathis sat. The Queen, poised and regal, regarded him with a mixture of amusement, curiosity, and, something she had not expected, nervousness. For weeks, Elias had studied, observed, and pieced together fragments of her hidden past. Every step, every question, every careful observation had brought him closer to the secret that no alien, no scholar, no rival had ever uncovered. Her true name? You have been persistent, Zirathis said, her voice echoing in the vast hall. No one has dared to follow the path you have taken, human. You have observed my childhood, my history, even the smallest forgotten details of my court. And yet, I wonder, do you truly know what it means to speak my true name? Elias bowed, slightly as was customary in the Vare court. I understand that it is more than a word, he said. It carries memory, trust, and the story of your life. And I promise to speak it only when the moment is right. A murmur ran through the hall. The nobles leaned forward, some in fear, others in disbelief. To hear a human speak the sacred name of the Queen was thought impossible. Even the bravest advisors did not dare attempt it in their lifetimes. And yet, here stood the envoy, calm, determined, and respectful. Zirathis studied him. She had played games, tested him, and let him explore her palace and its hidden history. She had expected him to fail, to grow frustrated, or to retreat. But he had not. His patience, insight, and care had brought him to this moment. And for the first time in centuries, she felt a flicker of uncertainty. "Then speak it if you are ready," she said, her voice both challenge and invitation. Elias drew a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling every fragment of song, rhyme, and story he had gathered. He remembered the old lullabies whispered by mothers to their children, the ceremonial gestures repeated for generations, the subtle patterns in the Queen's own movements. All of it formed a map to the hidden name. When he opened his eyes, he spoke clearly with respect and reverence. "Cyralia." The hall froze. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The name, soft yet full of meaning, filled the chamber. It was the name whispered in private nurseries long ago, the name given to the Queen by her mother, a name hidden by history and tradition. Shirathi's eyes widened. The crown she had worn for centuries felt heavier, as though the name carried a weight she had never expected to be revealed. No alien, no scholar, no rival had ever spoken it aloud. And now, a human had done so. A sound of disbelief rippled through the hall. Nobles gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others exchanged hurried glances. A few whispered urgently, trying to confirm what they had heard. The Queen leaned back slightly, her glowing eyes studying Elias. For the first time, she felt something entirely new: awe, surprise, and a sense of being truly seen. You have done what no one else could," she said softly. Elias bowed again, respectfully. "I have only observed, listened, and understood. Your name was hidden not because it was unreachable, but because no one cared enough to see it beyond the crown. I have tried to understand you as a person, not just as a ruler." A murmur of approval spread quietly among some of the more perceptive attendants. The human had not sought glory, nor power, nor to humiliate. He had acted with patience, curiosity, and empathy, the traits that set humanity apart from even the most advanced aliens. Shirathis felt a strange warmth in her chest. She remembered her childhood, the soft voice of her mother, the lullabies, the gentle hands that had named her and whispered promises in the night. Those memories, long buried beneath duty and power, now returned with vivid clarity. The name, once so fragile, had been spoken with care, and that care moved her in a way that nothing else had. "You see me," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then louder, to the court, "This human has done the impossible. He has spoken my true name." The nobles' reactions were mixed: shock, awe, and some envy. But all recognized the significance. The Queen's secret, the sacred element of her authority, had been revealed, and it was not a display of strength or cunning or technology. It was human insight, persistence, and empathy that had triumphed. Shirathis rose from her throne, moving down the steps with graceful authority. She stopped before Elias, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You have not only learned my name," she said, "but you have seen me as I am. You have understood what others cannot, and for that, I respect you." Elias stood tall, his expression calm. "I sought only understanding. That is what humans do. We observe, we listen, and we care. Nothing else mattered to me but to see beyond appearances." For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, the Queen smiled. A genuine, soft smile, rare and unguarded. The court gasped at the sight. Shirathis had not smiled like this in decades, not since she had been a child, not since she had worn the weight of an empire. "And now," she said, her voice steady, "the words I once thought sacred have been spoken. What is done cannot be undone." She looked around the hall, then back to Elias. "Let it be known. The human who spoke my name has my respect. He has shown what my people often forget. Curiosity, patience, and understanding can achieve what force and power cannot." Elias bowed one final time. "Thank you, Your Majesty. That is all I have ever sought, to understand and to learn." Teased. Court erupted, though this time not in mockery but in astonishment. The impossible had happened, and the Empire witnessed it firsthand. Humans, long underestimated, had proven their uniqueness, and for the first time, the Queen felt something extraordinary. The realization that a human could truly reach her heart, not through strength, not through fear, but through the quiet power of understanding. The grand hall of the Vare Dominion had never felt so alive. Sunlight filtered through the crystalline windows, casting shimmering patterns across the polished black floors. Nobles, attendants, and scholars moved quietly but with energy, their conversations filled with whispers and astonishment. The impossible had happened. A human had spoken the sacred name of the Queen, and the court was struggling to comprehend it. Queen Zirathis stood at the center, her glowing eyes soft but alert. The weight of centuries of tradition pressed lightly on her shoulders, yet she felt lighter than she had in decades. The crown atop her head no longer felt like an impenetrable shield. It felt like a symbol, a reminder that even the most powerful can be touched by patience, understanding, and courage. Elias Ward stood before her, calm and respectful, as he had been since the beginning of this challenge. He had not sought reward, glory, or favor. He had only observed, listened, and sought to understand. And in doing so, he had achieved what no one else could. He had reached beyond fear and power, beyond ritual and ceremony, to touch the essence of the Queen herself. The nobles, still murmuring among themselves, began to bow carefully, acknowledging the unprecedented event. Even the most skeptical of advisors knew that Elias's success was not simply chance. He had acted with patience, insight, and empathy, qualities that no alien court could teach or replicate. Queen Zirathis raised her hand, silencing the room. "Let it be known throughout the Dominion," she declared, her voice echoing like a bell across the hall, "that the human who has spoken my true name has done so with respect, care, and wisdom. He has reminded us all that strength is not only in power, but in understanding." A hush fell over the hall, followed by quiet, respectful applause. The court had learned a lesson that day, one that many would remember for generations. Humanity, though young and underestimated, had proven its uniqueness. In the days that followed, Elias continued to work with the Queen, studying her history, her culture, and her people. The court still watched him closely, but their suspicion had softened into respect. He moved among the palace with quiet dignity, asking questions that revealed more about the Vare than any conquest ever could. Zirathis, in turn, began to see her empire with new eyes. She had ruled for centuries, but no one had ever taken the time to understand her, not as a ruler, but as a being who had grown, learned, and remembered. Elias's approach reminded her that even a queen could be seen as more than the sum of her power. "You have changed something in this palace," she said one evening, walking beside him in the glass gardens, the colors of the exotic flowers reflected in her eyes, creating a cascade of light across the courtyard. "No one has ever approached me like this. You have shown me patience, insight, and understanding, qualities that my court often forgets." Elias smiled faintly. "I did not seek to change the palace," he said. "I sought only to understand you. But perhaps understanding is the first step toward change." The Queen nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps it is, and perhaps humanity is wiser than many give it credit for. Your people have potential, and your strength lies not in weapons or technology, but in the ability to see beyond appearances, to understand what others overlook." Over the following weeks, alliances and treaties were strengthened. The Vare Dominion began to see Earth not as a weak, inexperienced world, but as a species capable of insidesha,